All right, folks, welcome back to another deep dive with us. Today we're going to get into something a little different.
Yeah, a little spicy.
Yeah, a little bit. A piece by this guy, Stephen Pinkwart.
Mm-hmm.
And the title itself is a little bit of a warning. If you manage to digest this text, you're ready for more. So,
Yeah, he doesn't pull any punches, this guy.
no, he does not. If you're easily offended, you might want to skip this one. This is going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, this is not your feel-good self-help kind of writing advice. This
Yeah.
is more like a slap-in-the-face wake-up call.
Exactly. And, that's what makes it so intriguing.
Yeah.
He starts off by just, throwing all these conventions out the window, and he throws us right into this story about a young Charles Darwin in a pub.
Oh, yeah?
And you're thinking, okay, Darwin, evolution, survival of the fittest. But no,
This is about Darwin's appetite.
his very bizarre eating habits.
Yes.
And, what does that even have to do with writing?
Well, Pinkwart paints this picture of Darwin as a kind of, well, let's just say he had a adventurous palate.
Adventurous is putting it mildly, right?
Yeah. He describes him as a pathological hedonist and a sadist with a spoon. This guy supposedly ate everything from frogs to panther crabs to whole hawkbeak, heart, stomach, the whole 9 yards.
Oh, God. It's making me queasy just thinking about it. And not because he was hungry, mind you, but out of this insatiable curiosity to see how far he could push the limits of the human body. All in the name of knowledge, right?
Exactly. It's like this extreme form of pushing your boundaries to gain knowledge.
Sounds a little more like a dare gone wrong to me. But all right, so Pinkwart's using this pretty extreme example to make a point about us, about you listening right now. He's saying we all have the potential to be these Darwins in our own fields.
Yeah, not literally eating weird stuff, obviously.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
But having that kind of drive to go beyond the surface, to be willing to, crack open a metaphorical beetle to get to the juicy insights.
Right, to get your hands dirty to really understand something. And that's where his whole thing about eating your comfort zone comes in.
Yeah. So let's dig into that a bit. This whole Darwin as a culinary daredevil?
Mm-hmm.
Is that just a shock tactic to grab our attention, or is there a deeper meaning behind it?
I think it's definitely a way to grab our attention. But it's more than just a shock tactic. It points to this idea that real progress and true understanding often come from discomfort. This Darwin that Pinkwart describes, he embraces the unpleasant, the disgusting even, if it means gaining an edge in knowledge.
I mean, I get it, but do we really need to eat a hawk to be successful?
No, it's a metaphor. It's about not shying away from unconventional approaches, from criticism, or from leaving our comfort zones if we really want to break new ground. Think about it. How often do you avoid a challenging problem because it feels uncomfortable? Pinkwart would say that's where the real treasure lies.
Okay, I'm starting to see where he's going with this. And this ties in perfectly with his critique of all those feel-good writing gurus out there, right?
Yeah.
He really goes after them, doesn't he? He contrasts this desire for applause, for validation, with the pursuit of creating goosebumps. Mm-hmm.
And that analogy with the kindergarten drawing, it's brutal, but kind of true.
It is. He's saying this constant need for approval is holding us back. It's keeping us in this safe little bubble where we create something predictable, get a pat on the head, and that's it. But real impact, the kind that gets under your skin and gives you those goosebumps, that comes from pushing boundaries, from daring to create something unexpected, maybe even unsettling.
So it's not enough to just be good. You have to be willing to be different, to risk being disliked even.
Exactly. Think about it. If you always just did what was expected of you, where would innovation come from?
And speaking of pushing boundaries, he brings up this unforgettable anecdote about the first kiss in a morgue. This young poet, all nervous and excited, and then that twist in her poem.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think is the key takeaway from that story?
It's all about subverting expectations. The first kiss theme, it's classic, usually romantic, maybe a little awkward, but ultimately positive. And then she throws in this completely out-of-place, macabre twist with the morgue and the taste of formaldehyde. And the audience's reaction, first stunned silence, then nervous laughter, then back to dead silence.
Exactly. That's not polite applause. That's shock, a visceral reaction that sticks with you precisely because it's so unconventional and disturbing. It's the opposite of all the bland, predictable stuff we're usually bombarded with.
So for Pinkwart, that shock, that discomfort, it's a sign of real impact as opposed to lukewarm applause. And he applies the same principle to slam poetry, which he basically dismisses as a bunch of wordplay without any real substance. He says it's not about rhymes or pretty words, but about turning the audience's stomach with one sentence and then explaining why that's important. That's pretty unique definition of slam poetry, wouldn't you say?
Unique and deliberately provocative. He sees a lot of slam poetry performances as self-indulgent displays of verbal acrobatics without any real depth. He calls it yoga class for word acrobats. His ideal slam poetry is more like a weapon for raw, unfiltered truths. It's about breaking taboos, addressing uncomfortable truths, and provoking a deeper engagement from the audience.
Right, so it's not just about being shocking for the sake of being shocking. It's about using that shock to make people think, to make them feel something real.
Exactly. And this vomiting he talks about, it's obviously a metaphor. It's about this cathartic release that comes from confronting truth, even if it's initially painful or disgusting.
And then comes his rather violent call to kill your text. He uses this imagery of tearing it apart, devouring it, spitting it out, and rewriting it in blood. What's he trying to convey with this?
He's emphasizing the importance of a ruthless revision process. It's not about just polishing up the first draft. It's about dissecting it, exposing its weaknesses, and then rebuilding it from the ground up with more intensity and uncompromising honesty.
Dick surgery.
Exactly. The blood represents the passion, the energy, maybe even the pain that needs to go into this process to create something truly impactful. It's like Darwin dissecting every creature down to the last detail to truly understand it. We should dissect our texts in the same way.
Leave nothing but the raw truth behind. And then he gets into this distinction between chasing applause and creating goosebumps with some very specific examples. He calls it the goosebump lie. Can you summarize those examples for our listeners and explain what he's getting at?
Sure. He contrasts these typical applause-seeking themes like love, rain, or grandma's cookies with these provocative twists designed to elicit goosebumps. Like with the cookies, the knowledge of grandma's questionable hygiene suddenly turns this seemingly harmless treat into something quite repulsive.
Okay, yeah. That's a good one. So the point is, it's not about being nice or pleasant. It's about that unsettling truth that sticks with you.
Right. It's the formula. Provocation plus truth equals impact. Think about it. What's the last thing that really moved you? Was it something beautiful or something unexpected, maybe even disturbing?
I see what you mean. And then he challenges us to write things that would get us fired.
Oh, yeah.
He gives these three, let's say, risky scenarios. What's the idea behind this?
These examples are obviously meant to be provocative, to push the boundaries of what's acceptable. He's not advocating for illegal or unethical behavior. Instead, he's challenging us to think beyond the conventional, to confront uncomfortable truths, our own dark sides, or societal taboos. By incorporating these unsettling elements into our work, we can create a much deeper and more honest connection with the audience.
Even if it means making them squirm a little.
Right. It's about being authentic, even if it's uncomfortable. Think about artists who have truly made an impact. Were they always mainstream?
Good point. And that leads us to this notion of leaving the reader with dirty thoughts. These examples with the escalating birthday party, the first poem written on a napkin after a panic attack, the performance with vomit in the throat, they're pretty memorable, to say the least. What's his intention here?
He wants us to break free from this zoo of the tame, as he puts it. He wants us to shed the expectations and conventions that are stifling our creativity. These disturbing images are meant to wake us up and show us that real impact often comes from daring to break taboos and exploring the raw, unfiltered aspects of human existence. It's about provoking a visceral response that goes beyond mere approval, even if that response is initially one of discomfort or even disgust.
So it's not about being shocking for the sake of being shocking. It's about using that shock to create something real, something that leaves a mark.
Exactly. He wants our work to leave a stain, not just a pleasant scent.
At the end of his rant, Pinkwork gives us an ultimatum. Either remain a harmless no-owl, a boring slam mommy, or a pathetic applause beggar, or become the Charles fucking Darwin of poetry. That's a pretty direct challenge.
Absolutely. It's a wake-up call, a direct appeal to our ambition. He's deliberately polarizing to shake us out of our complacency. He wants us to make a choice. Do we settle for superficial approval, or do we strive for real, lasting impact, even if it means being uncomfortable or challenging conventions?
To be the Darwin of our own creative pursuits.
Right.
And that's where he introduces his book, Poetry Master, which he describes as a literary machete for hacking away at all those ineffective writing habits that keep us chasing applause. What are some of the key takeaways he highlights about the book?
He says Poetry Master is all about crafting texts that twitch, that elicit an immediate physical response from the reader or listener. He argues that this constant striving for approval is actually hindering our personal and creative growth. He also talks about writing texts that open wounds but are still appreciated, a kind of cathartic effect through brutal honesty.
So it's not just about being shocking or provocative. It's about using those techniques to deliver something real, something that makes people feel something deep.
Exactly. And finally, he talks about becoming a monster on stage, but not in a heartless way, but driven by this insatiable hunger for real connection and impact. It sounds like a book you wouldn't necessarily give to your grandma.
Definitely not for the faint of heart. And he ends his piece with a call to action for all German-speaking creatives to get their hands on the German edition of Poetry Master, with a quick shout-out to the English version for the international audience. And he leaves us with this image of embracing our authenticity and joining him in this gourmet club with our metaphorical owl. So, Stefan, be creative.
Be bold.
All right, folks, that was quite a journey through Steven Pinkwart's, let's just say, unconventional way of thinking. What's the key takeaway you're left with?
For me, it's all about consciously leaving your comfort zone behind and ditching the pursuit of superficial validation. It's about seeking out those uncomfortable truths and working them into your craft to create a deeper, more lasting impact. The applause might be absent, but the goosebumps you create are the real reward. And maybe a few bewildered stares, but hey, you can't please everyone.
Absolutely. And that brings me to my final question for you, dear listener. Inspired by Pinkwart's rather direct approach, what comfort zone in your own thinking or work is ripe for being metaphorically eaten or dissected to uncover something truly impactful? Maybe an uncomfortable truth you've been avoiding. It might be worth pondering. And if you're interested in exploring these ideas further, I highly recommend Stefan Pinkwart's Poetry Master Poesycraft in 7 Taken. So Stefan, be creative.
It's a fresh.
Until next time, folks, keep pushing those boundaries.